Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Nice to be with you here this exciting Shabbat. Exciting because we're referring to a world disaster, the flood, the deluge, in the time of Noah and his ark. And as I have repeatedly stated from the Zohar, that anybody, I say anybody, scholar or otherwise, perusing this section of Torah must come away with a feeling of, look, how ridiculous is this Torah going to become? Now, I know there's been 3,400 years of discussions regarding Torah, scholars and commentary, etc. And I don't want to minimize, nor do I want to eliminate these wonderful commentaries and insights into this particular section. However, without the dimension of Kabbalah, or specifically Zohar and Sefer Yetzirah of Abraham the Patriarch and the Ari HaKadosh, we must remain with so many unanswered questions, probably more unanswered questions than answers to some of the questions we've had. So therefore, it goes without saying that to understand this section or any other section without Zohar is a complete futility of exercise. And so therefore, for those who are not even familiar with the fact that there was once a world deluge where the world was totally destroyed by flooding, but not only flooding, but hail and brimstone, with its most ferocious ability, never even seen, certainly not in our modern day, of the ability of this flood to literally destroy everything in its path. And we're all familiar with hurricanes and floods, and all of that doesn't even compare to what this flood was all about. And what we should be questioning without any doubt is the fact that we also are familiar with Noah and his ark. This ark was going to protect species, all species that existed prior to the flood, so that they could then again re-establish a kind of a low end of what civilization was before the flood. And to comprehend and to understand that this little ark, because according to the dimensions, this ark could never survive the flooding, the hail and brimstone that also emerged at the same time. And consequently, the Zohar goes on to say that these dimensions are not for historical purposes, so that architects can create an ark or a boat that could float. The Titanic was much larger, and it did not survive. This little ark, with its very minor dimensions, nothing compared to a massive boat like the Titanic, and yet it survived. And so therefore, we must, of necessity, inject a Kabbalistic comprehension, understanding of this whole incident. Delving somewhat deeper into the story, it says that God saw that the land was nishchata, was being denigrated, was being brought to a point of destruction. Why? In other words, this land was not worthy to exist, just as it also says that the people were not fitting to exist in the kind of environment that existed at that moment, because ki hishchit kol basar et darko al haaretz. For the people, kol basar, not only the people but the animals, there was such corruption. There were no morals, no ethics, nothing. And consequently, they caused such negative activity which infiltrated the very essence of themselves, the very essence of everything around them, including the inanimate, including the earth. And what happened? And God tells Noah that he's going to bring a flood unto these people. And they would all be destroyed, and gives them instructions about how to assemble all living creatures by numbers, etc., and bring them into this little ark. And it was a little ark. If one just would want to accumulate the amount of animals and creatures and you name it, and this boat could never literally survive, could never literally have the capacity to embrace all of these people that were going to enter the ark. And of course, that old question that Kabbalists have always raised, and that is, come on. So it happened. If I'm not a historian, what does it do for me today? And even for a historian, it kind of is a good subject to explore. But what's beyond that? And of course, again, we have learned in Kabbalah, these are purely metaphors. These are not physical descriptions of what Torah is talking about. Torah is talking about the protection of humanity, the causes by which humanity undergoes flooding, hurricanes, plagues, illness, disease, you name it. This world does not have any shortage of chaos in any generation. Today, of course, more than ever before, this entire world is polluted, from our food chain to our water, to people, to our bodies. And how are we going to survive? And therefore, this section is so important. And for those who literally do not understand Hebrew, the greatest accomplishment at the center, I could say, had produced for mankind was this English translation of the Zohar. But the question that had been raised by many is if we had the English Zohar, do we need the Hebrew Zohar? And I'm not here to sell you anything. After 80 years, we're here just to share information. And when we say, I'm not here to sell you anything, I'm here to provide you with information, what you do is never the objective, is never something that we follow down the line. Well, will the person purchase or will he not? Is he going to accept these principles or is he not, or is she not? These things have no interest in this 80-year-old organization. We are here to share information. Take it as you please. Reject it if you desire so. But I and everyone that has ever been connected with this center knows and should know we are not concerned about how many people will accept or reject, or how many people will accept this kind of incredible information so that it can improve their lives, create miracles in their lives, and remove that awful burden of chaos. And so therefore, while I can merely share with you, as it does in the English Zohar, that we are not discussing a physical ark. What was presented to Noah was the accumulation. The numbers, dimensions are merely referring to what we know as bottled up energies, referred to as sfirot. Now, even in our English translation, it would have required just to translate the entire technology of how we can create our own ark without the physical labor of a carpenter, without the wood, without material, but surround ourselves, surround our families, surround our environment, surround the entire earth with these dimensions of bottled up energies, or more importantly, antimatter energy. Created. And how? How? We are now referring to metaphysical forms of energy, almost like the atom, that is, for us, invisible. Yet, as I move my hand, I'm probably displacing billions of atoms, but yet my hand can pass through that. I mean, that's a subject that is taught at the centers to enlighten how mankind has such an ability to control his environment. And therefore, if we are to carefully examine this section, we will notice that it was man's activity, man's consciousness, that brought about this destruction. But you might then say, but because they were so bad, as has been a 3,400-year tradition, therefore God came along and God destroyed the people. And we know that is a no-no in Kabbalah. For God has only one character and one characteristic, and that is one of sharing, compassion, reaching out, destruction, hate, hating for no reason, treating others with less than human dignity is not within that concept known as God. And therefore, what Torah is teaching us here, 50th century technology, that the mind with technology, with sfirot, with verses, and we'll come to the Aleph Bet known as the Hebrew language, which is one of the worst tragedies that I consider on behalf of Satan to bring about the dimension of chaos that we today, like never before, are literally at the throes of destroying our own environment. Not God, we. And with this technology that we changed, we caused, an entity known as water that was there the first day, water which represents God himself. Not God, but the energy of sharing, compassion. Water, which seeks its own level, but that is the clue, which says it has its own consciousness, but man's consciousness excuse me, can override any consciousness of the inanimate. It can influence others, yes, but a determined individual, as we have seen over and over again, even under extreme pressure of torture, the individual who's got that kind of stamina or is in belief of something will withstand until he expires or she expires. That's the power of mind. Not the power of the body, power of mind. And so therefore, what is demonstrated here is what mankind did to the water. The water which knows of only seeking its own level to share was corrupted, turned into a monster, took this bottled up structure of water that without which mankind cannot survive, but altered the consciousness of this water. And therefore the center has been working 80 years on how to restore that water back to its godly-like feature. Of removing chaos. And so when we come to that war room, as we call our synagogue, it's not a synagogue, it's a war room, and we're prepared to battle and take on the forces of evil, for that is where the battle can be lost or won. And that with this reading of Noah, despite the fact that we may not understand one word of what is written or that which is within the Hebrew section, which includes all of the technology, and that's why I say you have an English Zohar, but you don't, unfortunately, have the full impact of the power of the Hebrew Zohar, which Rabbi Ashlan revealed with all of its technology. And we know the power that is generated by that Zohar in becoming part and parcel, because we can scan it, and certainly to a greater degree if you can understand it. But I just wanted to make that point as well. I'm flooding you with so much because there is so much in Noah that I probably will not be able to cover. And so the important aspect that emerged here is how the mind of an individual with the technology of Kabbalah can alter, can improve, and ultimately eliminate the chaos that is so damaging at the present time and only continues to get worse. And then we have, after the flood, God telling Noah, and I've got to be brief about this, I'm going to put a rainbow up there in that sky, and when I see that rainbow, I'm going to remember that I made you a promise, Noah, I would never again bring a flood upon this earth. You ask the people in New Orleans, you ask the people in Florida, you ask that southeastern region, or when we get up into the Mississippi and Missouri areas, you ask these people, God, we've seen the rainbows. Where's your promise? Oh, no, I only said I wouldn't destroy the entire world all at once. But I could destroy a little piece here, a little piece there, kill off a couple of tens of million people in China by flooding. I mean, that's only piecemeal. You know, it's like we say about cancer. Is cancer a plague? Of course not. It only kills a couple of thousand here, a couple of thousand there, but that's not a plague. A plague would be if all of mankind died at once. I mean, this is our concept today of what God meant when he said, I would not destroy the world, because I will remember. I will remember when I see that rainbow. And come on, let's face it. We're not little children. Are we assuming that God has loss of memory like a human being? In other words, if he didn't have that rainbow, he was going to forget about what happened, what he supposedly did during the flood. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. All that God is reminding us is, again, Kabbalistic technology. Does he needs a reference? But we know that the rainbow consists of those three columns of energy, right, left, and central, without going into the details. And it's again a reminder, when chaos is about to set upon you, remember, you've got to look out for balance. You've got to create a balance in that energy, whether it's a hurricane. And we've had experiences. Hurricane due west going to hit southern Florida. A hurricane, I remember, just a couple of years ago. And what did we do? What did we do? Pray? No. We applied Kabbalistic technology to prevent that hurricane from striking as Andrew did. And at that time, we just didn't have the technology, unfortunately. But this one, and I remembered so clearly, they called up and they said, it's heading at 60 miles away from mainland. 60 miles away. Only a miracle can divert it on a 90-degree angle, meaning it's headed due west, going to hit the shoreline of Florida, and it's got to make a right angle turn, 90-degree angle turn, to avoid devastation. Sure enough, my friends, that's what happened. A miracle. Or was it us? Maybe yeah, maybe no. Who cares? It's certainly worth a try. More importantly, I would trust a 4,000-year-old technology than the technology of the Weather Bureau, because they can't tell you what to do. They can only tell you to run away. They can forewarn you. But they're under no illusion that the Weather Bureau is going to divert that storm. They make no claims. We do. Who does? Me? No. No. The Zohar. Earthquakes, as we have done here in California, preventing earthquakes from happening. That was destined to happen beyond any doubt. The big one, at the right time. Use our technology to prevent that kind of chaos. It sounds far out, but trust me, you could be wise and say, I'm not going to accept those far out concepts or ideas. You know what? Embrace your chaos. That's your alternative. And we have no objection. As I said before, you have a right to reject, and we will in no way be affected. We will no way will be hurt. And maybe why didn't you listen? And now, amongst so many things, we have the Tower of Babel thing here. But I'm just going to touch on what I consider to be the most significant corruption that exists to this very time, from time immemorial, and that is one verse in Noah. And I'm referring to chapter 11, verse 1. Vahi kol haaretz safa echat udvarim achadim. This is just before the Tower of Babel incident. One verse just before. There was one language. Udvarim achadim. And unified things, however you want to interpret it. And they struggled. One voice, one conclusion, one idea, one advice. What does it have to do with one language? And to make the long story short, and you have that fortunately today in your English Zohar, that there was only one universal language at any given time, and that was not the Hebrew language, the universal language, which is the Aleph Bet. It's not a Jewish language. It's not a Hebrew language. It's not a Japanese language. It is the universal language. And with this universal language, Udvarim Achadim, can you create unity? Can you create unification? Because, my friends, the reason we can't fly from here to Tokyo, and the reason we can't fly from New York to London, is because there is separation that I have discussed on many other occasions. Fragmentation can only be eliminated, and fragmentation is the root of all evil. And fragmentation can only be brought about by this one language, by making use of this one language, incorporating this one language, this one universal language into a unified universe without separation, and consequently all of the limitations of time, space, and motion can and will be eliminated. And that's what our purpose is with this reading of Noah. Whether you read it, you listen, or you don't, or you hear this too late, bear in mind, put your consciousness to it, that with this language, known presently as the Hebrew language, albeit a universal language, together with the technology, can create the unification. And I'm not looking for a unified where there's only one consciousness everybody is going to be the same as everybody else. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how billions of human beings can live together independently, yet understand that unity is the basis of the removal of chaos. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.